was encouraged that he had recognized that as an issue.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that will happen every time you have a budget surplus, as we do at this moment, is the people who take credit for it and the people who say, that's not yours, it's ours. We did that as opposed to you did that. And there was some of that this week as well.
Success does have 1,000 fathers, as they say, and it's a combination of everything. Obviously, the federal government printed a lot of money. They sent a lot of that money to the states and local governments, and so we now have the responsibility to use that money judiciously. We were very conservative the last 2 years in our not only our budgeting, but also the revenue estimates we used to plan the budgets. Right now, revenue is coming in a very aggressive way across every line of taxation. Sales tax, income tax, corporate tax, what we refer to as sin taxes, gambling taxes. It's all coming in very aggressively. The biggest concern is, when will that stop? This can't be sustained. And, of course, hanging over all of this is the inflation issues that we have in our economy right now.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you're going to have to figure out. One of the things that in that angle, to me, is a very, very difficult thing to solve is the issue of fixing the roads. Infrastructure, especially when so much of it hinges on people buying gas at the gas pump and getting out on the roads. Less and less of that is going on right now. The price of gas is so high, and people are doing less driving, and that's been the case since before the pandemic ever hit. And so there are shortfalls there that were built in. It seemed like nobody was going to slow down the driving, and so that revenue was always going to come in. That's starting to disappear now, and finding the solution, the right balance there, is really, really hard to do.
And underlying all of that is the allocation that we take out of the motor license fund, which is where your gas tax and registration fees go to fund the state police. We've talked about this in years past. Obviously, the state police need every dollar that we allocate to them and more. The question is, where does it come from? And I'm a big believer, and the governor proposed this, and again, an area of common ground, I believe, where we start paying for the state police more so out of the general fund budget and leave the gas tax and registration revenue for where it should go, which is roads and bridges. That's about a $560 million a year drawdown that we take out of that fund. So it's time to make that correct and make that right. I think we all paused and took a deep breath whenever we saw the bridge collapse in the city of Pittsburgh. That was a city-owned bridge, but nevertheless, bridges are bridges, and it speaks to the infrastructure issues we have. Your point about the gas tax revenue overall is a very sound point. Not only do we have more fuel-efficient vehicles coming into the market, so your consumption is less, but we also have the advent of electric vehicles. That's a big issue. Right now, electric vehicles do not pay into highway infrastructure in any way. So that's going to be a conversation we're going to need to have.
Mm-hmm. There have been conversations on a federal level, and I don't know if they've ever advanced on the state level, about mileage taxes rather than the gas taxes, so that if you do live at a distance and you drive every day, you're going to pay more. Doesn't matter if you're driving on dirt roads or good roads or bad roads, you're going to pay more by living away. And to me, there's a lot of problems if you approach it that way.
I think there are a lot of problems if you approach it that way. And also keep in mind that the gas tax, we are the Keystone State. We get a lot of interstate travel. People fuel up in the Commonwealth from out of state. That becomes our revenue. And so that is something that we have to keep in mind as to if we go into issues with registration fees and we go into issues with mileage taxes, if you will, those are only borne by the residents of the Commonwealth. And so we have to understand that we have a lot of out-of-state users on our highways, which is why when you look at tolling and you look at gas tax revenues, that's at least something that's shared by people coming through the state as well.
A couple of things that we typically talk about. Reggie is one of those, and I know that is, that's it's going to come to a head soon. And of course the budget negotiations and the committee appearances, all of that, working out the budget, those are going to really dominate over the next couple of months, I would say, right?
Yeah, and it all ties in. The budget hearings, they begin, at least in the Senate, not this coming week, but the following week. So we'll have 3 or 4 weeks of those hearings. Some of the problems I have with the governor's budget address is what he didn't talk about. And he didn't talk about Reggie. He didn't talk about the fact that he has estimated $410 million of revenue coming from the Reggie tax, which is ultimately an electricity tax at the end of the day. Producers of electricity will pay that tax. So he's, on one hand, was talking about how we need to increase the minimum wage so people can pay their bills and make ends meet. On the other hand, he's promoting an electricity tax, which makes it harder to make ends meet, number one, and number two, threatens family-sustaining jobs in our Commonwealth. Whether the minimum wage is $7.50 an hour or $15 an hour, it's universally agreed that that is not a living wage. The reality is people that work in our energy production sector, they're making living wages. So they're able to make the ends meet. Mm-hmm. And so I find that part of his budget and policy effort to be candidly hypocritical.
And the offset auctions in December were so alarming because they were, 10 times more than what the previous estimate was. That's going to push power companies out of business quicker.
The modeling is completely skewed on Reggie. It's totally off the charts right now, and it really speaks to the fact that whether we like it or not, carbon-emitting sources of electricity are critical to powering the grid. And it's really ironic if you look at what our grid estimates are for the next 2 decades and what's going to cause an increase in demand. There are 2 things: data centers, aka cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all that good stuff, and electric vehicles. And so the power has to come from somewhere. And the renewable piece of this is not keeping pace. Our nuclear fleet is what it is. It will never get bigger, at least in this current regulatory environment. And so we're left with the natural gas and the coal as the only 2 sources of electricity that can move with demand.
State Senator Joe Pittman with us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. A few moments left. To you, what will be the issues that will drive the narrative here over the course of the next couple of months? What are the things you'd like to see, and what do you predict we will see?
Well, I certainly would like to see a resolution to this entire Reggie discussion. Representative Struzzi has advanced his bill in the House. He's proposed that we bring some dollars to the table for environmental issues, water and sewer, infrastructure, things of that nature. And the reality is there is a lot of bipartisan agreement when it comes to the need for a healthy environment. And I think we can sit down and we can make investments into water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, remediation of pollution in the streams, namely through abandoned mine reclamation, things of that nature. So I hope we do sit down and we come up with a common ground approach to improving our environment, but doing it in a smart way. Secondly to that is the basic fundamentals of the budget. We're going to have to balance the budget. I'm quite confident that we're going to balance it on time. I'm quite confident that we're going to leave a surplus in place for the next governor in the next fiscal year. It's just going to be a question of how much and where those dollars go. I do believe the state system needs to be a big part of that. I'm eager to try to bring some investment into the system, but the one thing I will not tolerate is just giving the system a blank check. I continue to believe that the 14 schools in the system have not shared an equal amount of pain compared to whenever you look at what IUP has gone through. And I'm certainly not eager to reward other universities that not have taken steps, as necessary and painful as they may be, to right-size their educational offerings.
He is State Senator Joe Pittman joining us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks. It's always quick. You know, I always judge my days on when I come through downtown if I get red lights or green lights. And today was a red light kind of day, so we'll see where the rest of it goes.
Have a great one.
You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.